70 years. That's how long I had lived before the day everything inside me quietly broke, and then rebuilt itself into something stronger. 70 years of love, sacrifice, patience, and, as it turned out, illusion. My name is Allison Miller. I live in Charleston, South Carolina, in a modest apartment that has held my entire life within its walls. From my balcony, I can see the Ashley River winding its way through the city like a ribbon of memory. It's a view I've looked at for decades, through laughter, through grief, and now through awakening. For 35 years, I worked as a librarian at the Central Bank's Research Library downtown. It wasn't a glamorous job, but it was a meaningful one. I spent my life surrounded by knowledge, by quiet, by stories. I helped others find answers, even when I didn't realize I was slowly losing my own. But my greatest story, my proudest chapter, was my family. Or at least that's what I believed. The morning of my 70th birthday. The morning began like any other. I woke early, just as I had done for most of my life. Age may change your body, but it rarely changes your habits. The soft light filtered through the curtains, casting a gentle glow across my bedroom. I made my bed carefully, smoothing the cotton sheets my dear friend Margaret had gifted me years ago. She always had a way of choosing things that felt like comfort itself. In the kitchen, I brewed a strong cup of black coffee. No sugar, no milk. Just the way I liked it. Simple. Honest. I carried it out to the balcony and sat in my usual chair. The river was calm that morning. Almost too calm. There was a stillness in the air that I couldn't quite explain. A quiet tension like the pause before a storm. I didn't know it yet, but that feeling was my intuition trying to warn me. As mothers, we always know, even when we try not to. A life built on love. As I sat there, I found myself drifting into memories. My husband, Leonard. Even now, saying his name in my mind brought both warmth and ache. He had been gone for 8 years, taken suddenly by a heart attack in his sleep. One moment he was there, the steady presence in my life, and the next he was gone. 40 years of marriage. 40 years of shared dreams, shared struggles, shared laughter. Leonard had been the kind of man who believed in building a life brick by brick. He wasn't flashy, but he was dependable, strong, thoughtful. And he loved our son more than anything. Julian. Our only child. The boy we waited 5 long years for. The boy who became the center of our world. The son we raised. I glanced inside the apartment toward the shelf lined with photographs. There was one picture I always paused on. Julian, maybe 6 years old, sitting proudly on Leonard's shoulders. Both of them laughing, completely carefree. That moment captured everything we had worked for. Hope. Future. Legacy. Leonard used to say, "That boy is going to do great things." And he did. Julian grew into a successful man. He studied economics, traveled abroad, built a career in banking. Today he's a branch manager. Respected, polished, always busy. Too busy. Least for me. The distance that crept in. Somewhere along the years something changed. First it was small. Fewer visits. Shorter phone calls. More excuses. "Mom, I've got work." "Mom, I'm tied up today." "Mom, we'll do it next week." I told myself it was normal. Children grow up. They build their own lives. They move on. That's what I kept telling myself. But deep down, I felt it. That quiet shift. That slow fading. The new family. Julian married Patricia 15 years ago. She was beautiful, elegant, and always perfectly put together. On the surface, she was polite, respectful even. But there was something else. Something subtle. Something cold. An invisible distance that never quite closed. And then there was her mother, Edith. A woman who carried herself like she owned every room she walked into. She ran a chain of beauty stores across the city, and she never missed a chance to remind people of her success. From the very beginning, I could feel her judgment. Not spoken, but present. Always present. To her, I wasn't Julian's mother. I was outdated. A birthday that meant something. I looked down at my hands wrapped around the coffee cup. 70. That number felt heavy. Not because of age, but because of meaning. 70 years of life deserved more than silence. More than a rushed phone call. More than being an afterthought. For the first time in a long time, I made a decision. I wouldn't spend this birthday alone feeling sorry for myself. No, this year would be different. The call. I went inside and picked up my phone. My fingers hesitated for just a moment before dialing Julian's number. He answered after a few rings. "Hi, Mom." His voice was rushed. Distracted. Just like always. "Good morning, son," I said gently. "I just wanted to remind you. Today is my birthday." A brief pause. Then, "I know, Mom. I was going to call later. Happy birthday." The words were there, but the feeling wasn't. "Thank you," I said. "I was thinking maybe we could have dinner tonight. Just the two of us. It's been a while since we really talked." Silence. Then came the hesitation. I knew that hesitation. Every mother does. "Mom, tonight's tough. I've got a client meeting in New York. It's important. I can't cancel." The words landed like quiet blows. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just heavy. I swallowed. "Of course," I replied. "Work comes first. We'll celebrate this weekend," he added quickly. "I'll bring a cake." A cake. I forced a small smile, even though he couldn't see it. "That sounds nice." We hung up. And just like that, my birthday felt smaller. A decision to stand alone. I stood there for a long moment staring at the blank screen. Then I looked toward Leonard's photograph. "What would you do?" I whispered. Of course there was no answer. Only silence. But something inside me shifted. I walked into my bedroom and opened the closet. There it was. The navy dress Leonard had always loved. "That dress was made for you," he used to say. I ran my fingers over the fabric. Then I made another decision. If no one was going to celebrate me, I would celebrate myself. Preparing for the night. I took my time getting ready. A long shower. Carefully styled hair. Light makeup. Just enough to bring back the glow I remembered. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see just a 70-year-old woman. I saw someone who had lived, loved, endured, and still had light in her eyes. I put on my pearl earrings, the ones Leonard gave me for our anniversary. "For the most precious woman in my life," he had said. I held on to that memory, because somewhere along the way, I had forgotten I was still that woman. Stepping out. As I walked through the lobby, Richard, the doorman, looked surprised. "Mrs. Allison, you look wonderful. Heading somewhere special?" "It's my birthday," I said with a soft smile. His face lit up. "Well then, happy birthday. Is your son picking you up?" I paused. Just for a second. "No," I said. "He's busy." Richard nodded, but I could see something in his eyes. Understanding. Maybe even sadness. He called a taxi for me. And as I stepped outside, I had no idea that within a few hours, my entire life would change. The beginning of the end. The taxi moved through the city as I watched the familiar streets pass by. Charleston looked beautiful that night. Warm lights. Busy sidewalks. Life moving forward. I asked the driver to take me to a place that held memories. A place where Leonard and I had celebrated our happiest moments. The Riverside View restaurant. It was expensive. More than I should have spent. But tonight, I was worth it. And as the car came to a stop, and I stepped out onto those elegant marble steps, I had no idea that inside that restaurant, I would come face to face with a truth that would shatter everything I believed about my family. The moment I stepped inside the restaurant, I felt it. That quiet shift in the air. The kind you only notice when something inside you is about to change forever. The Riverside View restaurant hadn't changed much over the years. The same polished marble floors, the same soft golden lighting, the same gentle hum of conversation blending with the distant notes of a live piano. It was elegant, refined, a place where people came to celebrate important moments. And tonight, I had come to celebrate mine, or at least that's what I believed. A familiar face. Mrs. Allison? I turned at the sound of my name. Michael, the waiter who had served Leonard and me for years. His face lit up with recognition. "It's been so long," he said warmly. "Are we celebrating something special tonight?" For a moment I hesitated. Then I smiled. "Yes," I said softly. "My birthday. I turned 70 today." His expression brightened even more. "That's wonderful. Congratulations. Will your son be joining you?" The question landed gently, but it still hurt. There it was again, that quiet assumption. That of course I wouldn't be alone. That of course my family would be there. I held my composure. "No," I replied calmly. "It's just me tonight." Something flickered in his eyes. Understanding. But he didn't press further. "Right this way," he said kindly. The walk that changed everything. As I followed him through the dining area, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The tables were filled with couples, families, laughter. Glasses clinked. Soft voices blended into a gentle rhythm. It should have felt comforting. Instead it felt distant, like I was walking through someone else's life. And then, it happened. The moment. We passed a table by the window. Perfect table. The kind Leonard and I used to request every time. And that's when I saw him. Julian, my son, sitting there, laughing, relaxed, happy. For a second my mind refused to process what my eyes were seeing. No, that wasn't possible. He was supposed to be in New York. In a meeting. Busy. Too busy for his mother. But there he was. Right in front of me. The truth revealed. Time didn't just slow down. It stopped. My breath caught in my throat. My hands went cold. Everything inside me went still. Because he wasn't alone. Sitting across from him was Patricia. Perfectly dressed. Elegant. Smiling. And beside her, Edith. Confident as ever, her posture straight, her expression full of quiet authority. They were laughing. Raising glasses. Celebrating. Together. The silent collapse. "Mrs. Allison, are you all right?" Michael's voice pulled me slightly back to reality. But I couldn't answer him. I couldn't move. I couldn't look away. My son had lied to me. Not by accident. Not out of necessity. But by choice. He had looked me in the eyes, and chosen not to include me. On my 70th birthday. Choosing not to break. 1,000 emotions rushed through me all at once. Shock, pain, humiliation, and something else. Something deeper. Something colder. But I didn't cry. Not there. Not in front of them. I straightened my posture, took a slow breath, and spoke. "I'm fine," I said quietly. "Please just give me a table somewhere. Out of the way." Michael nodded immediately. He didn't ask questions. Didn't push. Just guided me to a quiet corner. Far enough that I wouldn't be seen easily, but close enough that I could see everything. Watching from the shadows. I sat down, my hands still trembling slightly. "I'll have a glass of white wine," I said. When it arrived, I held the glass for a moment before taking a sip. The cool liquid did nothing to calm the storm inside me. As my eyes, they wouldn't leave that table. The celebration. That's when I noticed it. The small cake, placed carefully in the center of their table. Candles. Decorations. And then, the number. My heart sank. This wasn't just dinner. This was a birthday celebration. For Patricia. The realization. A strange numbness spread through me. It wasn't jealousy. It wasn't even anger, at least not yet. It was something quieter. more painful. Understanding. He hadn't forgotten my birthday. He had chosen hers instead. Chosen her celebration over mine. Memories that hurt. I watched as Julian leaned forward, lighting the candles. His face softened in a way I hadn't seen in years. That gentle expression. That warmth. Once that had been mine. A memory flashed in my mind. Julian at 6 years old. Sitting at our kitchen table. Me weak with fever, struggling to finish his birthday cake. I had barely been able to stand. But I did it anyway. Because I couldn't let my son feel forgotten. And when he saw it, his face lit up like the world had just given him everything. This is the best cake ever, Mom. He had hugged me so tightly, like I was his entire universe. Where did that boy go? I stared at the man sitting across the room. Polished, successful, distant. And I couldn't help but ask myself, when did he change? When did love become obligation? When did I become secondary? The perfect family illusion. The laughter at their table grew louder. Patricia opened a gift. A bracelet by the look of it. She gasped. Edith smiled proudly. Julian watched her with admiration. Everything about that scene looked perfect. Flawless. Like something out of a magazine. A complete family. Except for one thing. I wasn't part of it. The breaking point. I took another sip of wine. Then another. Not because I wanted to drink, but because I needed something to hold on to. Something to steady myself. Because inside me, something was shifting. The final blow. And then, Amanda arrived. My granddaughter. Bright. Warm. The only light that still connected me to that family. She rushed to the table, hugging Patricia, smiling, laughing. Completely unaware. She didn't know. She didn't know her grandmother was sitting just a few tables away. Alone. On her birthday. Because her father had lied. The decision. That was the moment. Not when I saw Julian. Not when I realized the lie. But when I saw Amanda. Happy. Innocent. Unaware of the truth. That's when something inside me settled. Not broke. Settled. Like a storm finally choosing its direction. Clarity. I reached into my purse. Took out my phone. And stared at the screen. For years, I had trusted Julian with everything. The accounts. The investments. The future Leonard and I had built. He believed it was his. That it would all eventually belong to him. But there was one thing he didn't know. One detail he had overlooked. I still held control. All of it. The first move. My fingers hovered over the screen. This wasn't just a reaction. This wasn't anger. This was a decision. A turning point. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't thinking like a mother trying to protect her son. I was thinking like a woman. Protecting herself. The calm before the storm. I placed the phone back in my purse. Slowly. Deliberately. Then I stood up. My legs felt weak. But my resolve didn't. I adjusted my dress. Lifted my chin. And began walking. Toward the truth. Each step toward their table felt heavier than the last. Not because I was afraid. But because I knew. There was no going back after this. Julian looked up first. His smile faded instantly. His face drained of color. Patricia turned. Frozen. Edith frowned. Annoyed. Only Amanda smiled. Bright. Innocent. Grandma, she said. What a surprise. The silence before impact. I reached the table. Every eye on me. Every breath held. And in that moment, I realized something powerful. They weren't expecting me. Not tonight. Not here. Not like this. And that was exactly why everything was about to change. For a few seconds, no one spoke. The air at the table felt heavy, like it had been drained of oxygen. Every eye was on me. Julian's face had completely lost its color. Patricia looked frozen. her fingers still resting on the gift box she had just opened. Edith's expression tightened. Annoyance mixed with something sharper now, unease. Only Amanda stood up, smiling, completely unaware of the storm she was standing in. "Grandma," she said, stepping forward and wrapping her arms around me. "Why didn't you tell us you were coming?" Her warmth nearly broke me, but I held it together. I hugged her back gently, breathing in that familiar comfort. Her innocence, her love, the only thing in that moment that still felt real. "I came to celebrate my birthday," I said softly. She pulled back, surprised. "Today? Wait. Today is your birthday." Her eyes moved instantly toward her father. And that's when the silence cracked. The lie exposed. Julian opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. "Mom, it's all right," I said calmly, cutting him off. My voice surprised even me. It was steady, controlled, too controlled. "I understand," I continued. "Patricia's birthday is clearly more important." A sharp stillness fell over the table. Patricia lowered her gaze. For the first time since I had known her, she couldn't meet my eyes. Edith shifted in her chair, her usual confidence faltering just slightly. Amanda looked from one face to another, confusion spreading quickly. "Dad?" she whispered. But Julian still had no words. The moment we passed a table by the window. Perfect table. The kind Leonard and I used to request every time. And that's when I saw him. Julian, my son, sitting there, laughing, relaxed, happy. For a second, my mind refused to process what my eyes were seeing. No, that was impossible. He was supposed to be in New York, in a meeting, busy, too busy for his mother. But there he was, right in front of me. The truth revealed. Time didn't just slow down. It stopped. My breath caught in my throat. My hands went cold. Everything inside me went still. Because he wasn't alone. Sitting across from him was Patricia, perfectly dressed, elegant, smiling. And beside her, Edith, confident as ever, her posture straight, her expression full of quiet authority. They were laughing, raising glasses, celebrating, together. The silent collapse. "Mrs. Allison, are you all right?" Michael's voice pulled me slightly back to reality. But I couldn't answer him. I couldn't move. I couldn't look away. My son had lied to me. Not by accident. Not out of necessity. But by choice. He had looked me in the eyes, and chosen not to include me. On my 70th birthday. Choosing not to break. 1,000 emotions rushed through me all at once. Shock, pain, humiliation, and something else. Something deeper. Something colder. But I didn't cry. Not there. Not in front of them. I straightened my posture, took a slow breath, and spoke. "I'm fine," I said quietly. "Please just give me a table somewhere. Out of the way." Michael nodded immediately. He didn't ask questions. Didn't push. Just guided me to a quiet corner. Far enough that I wouldn't be seen easily, but close enough that I could see everything. Watching from the shadows. I sat down, my hands still trembling slightly. "I'll have a glass of white wine," I said. When it arrived, I held the glass for a moment before taking a sip. The cool liquid did nothing to calm the storm inside me. Patricia's head snapped toward him. "What is she talking about?" Julian didn't answer. Because he couldn't. Because he knew. I was telling the truth. The hidden reality. "For years," I continued, "you believed everything was already yours. That it was just a matter of time." I tilted my head slightly. "You never thought to ask." That silence again. But this time, it wasn't confusion. It was realization. "Edith speaks. This is completely inappropriate," Edith finally said, her voice sharp, trying to regain control. "You don't make financial decisions like this in the middle of a restaurant." I turned to her. Slowly. Measured. You're right, I said. You don't. Then I paused. But I did. Her lips pressed together. For once, she had no comeback ready. The truth behind the money. That money, I continued, turning back to Julian, was built over a lifetime. My voice softened slightly. But don't mistake that softness for weakness. Your father and I worked for decades to build it. Sacrificed things you'll never fully understand. I took a breath. And you treated it like it was already yours to spend. The final blow. How much? Julian asked suddenly, his voice tight. How much did you move? I didn't hesitate. Enough. That one word hit harder than any number could have. The realization hits Patricia. Patricia turned toward him again. Her voice lower now. Tense. You told me that money was secure, she said. You said we could use it for the house. There it was. The truth underneath everything. Plans. Expectations. Decisions made. Without me. The breaking point. I felt something inside me finally settle completely. Not anger. Not pain. Clarity. That money is not your future, I said firmly. It is my present. Julian loses control. Mom, you're overreacting. Julian snapped. This is insane. It was just one dinner. One dinner. I repeated. My voice dropped. Lower. Sharper. You lied to me. The words hung in the air. Heavy. Final. You looked me in the eyes and chose to lie. The emotional truth. My chest tightened. But I didn't stop. What hurts isn't that you didn't come, I said quietly. It's that you didn't respect me enough to tell the truth. My eyes locked onto his. If you had said, Mom, it's Patricia's birthday and I want to celebrate with her. I paused. I would have understood. A long silence followed. Because he knew. He knew I was right. Amanda understands. I saw Amanda's expression change. The confusion fading. Replaced by something deeper. Understanding. And sadness. The exit. I straightened my posture. This isn't about money, I said. It never was. Picked up my purse. But now, you'll finally understand what it feels like to lose control. A final moment of love. I turned to Amanda. Come visit me soon, I said gently. My door is always open. She hugged me tightly. I'm sorry, Grandma, she whispered. I held her close for a moment longer than usual, because I knew she was the only piece of that family I hadn't lost. Walking away. Then I turned and walked away. Not quickly, not angrily, but with dignity, with control, with something I hadn't felt in years. Power. The beginning of change. As I stepped out of the restaurant, the cool night air hit my face. I took a deep breath. And for the first time that night, I felt something unexpected. Not sadness, not regret, but relief. Because that moment, that confrontation, that decision, it wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The night air felt different. Cooler, sharper, cleaner. As I stepped away from the restaurant, the sounds behind me faded. The laughter, the music, the illusion of perfect families living perfect lives. I didn't look back. Not once. Because something inside me had already moved forward. Walking into clarity. Instead of calling a taxi immediately, I began to walk. Slowly. Deliberately. The riverside path stretched ahead. Lit by soft streetlights reflecting off the water. The Ashley River moved quietly beside me, steady and indifferent. Just as it had for decades. Life keeps flowing. No matter what breaks along the way. My heels clicked softly against the pavement, each step grounding me further. And with every step, the chaos inside me began to organize itself into something else. Something sharper. The truth about what I did. I reached into my purse and took out my phone. The screen still displayed the transaction confirmation. I stared at it for a moment. Then I smiled faintly, because the truth was, I hadn't transferred everything. Not really. I had moved enough to shake him, enough to disrupt his sense of control, enough to make him feel what I had felt: uncertain, vulnerable, exposed. The rest? Still exactly where it needed to be. Safe, under my control. The secret he never knew. Julian had always believed something about me. That I was dependent. That I didn't understand finances. That I needed him. And for years, I allowed him to believe it. But what he never knew was that for the past 5 years, I had been learning, quietly, relentlessly. The beginning of my education started with a book, one I found by accident at the library before I retired. A simple title: Finance for Independent Women. First, I picked it up out of curiosity, but something about it stayed with me. Something inside those pages awakened a question I had never asked myself before. What if I could do this on my own? From curiosity to control. That question changed everything. I started reading more books, articles, investment guides. Amanda helped me navigate online resources, teaching me how to use apps, platforms, tools I had once found intimidating. Slowly, carefully, I began to understand interest rates, market trends, risk management, portfolio balance. It wasn't magic. It was knowledge. And knowledge is power. Watching in silence. While I learned, I watched. I watched how Julian handled the money. First, I trusted him completely. And to be fair, many of his decisions were solid. But over time, I noticed patterns. Small things. Subtle shifts. Choices that benefited him more than me. The signs I ignored. A renovation for the vacation house, one I rarely visited. An investment in a company owned by Patricia's friend. A luxury car, justified as necessary for image. Individually, they seemed harmless. But together, they told a different story. Not theft. Not exactly. But entitlement. The moment trust cracked. And yet I stayed silent. Not because I didn't see it, but because I trusted him. Because he was my son. Because I believed that somewhere beneath it all, he still respected me. Tonight proved me wrong. The plan begins. I sat down on a bench overlooking the river. The wind picked up slightly, carrying the scent of distant rain. And for the first time that night, I wasn't reacting. I was planning, rewriting the system. I opened my banking apps. Not the ones Julian knew about. The others. The private ones. The ones I had built quietly over the years. I began making adjustments, reallocating funds, shifting assets, securing positions. Every move calculated. Every decision intentional. Not revenge, a lesson. This wasn't revenge. Not in the way most people think. I didn't want to destroy my son. I wanted to wake him up. To force him to see something he had ignored for too long. Respect. Boundaries. Consequences. Control restored. By the time I finished, everything had changed. Access points. Authorization levels. Spending permissions. Julian would still have access. But limited. Controlled. Supervised. Just enough to function. Not enough to dominate. The call I didn't answer. My phone rang. Julian. I watched the screen. Let it ring. Then again. And again. Messages followed. Mom, what did you do? Call me back. We need to fix this now. I didn't respond. Not because I was angry, but because for the first time, I wasn't rushing to comfort him. Returning home. By the time I reached my building, the rain had started. Soft at first. Then steady. Richard, the doorman, looked up as I entered. Good evening, Mrs. Allison. Everything all right? I paused, then smiled. It was enlightening. He nodded, sensing there was more, but respecting my silence. preparing for the next move. Inside my apartment, everything felt the same. The same furniture, the same photographs, the same quiet. But I was different, completely different. I changed into a soft robe, washed away the night, and stood in front of the mirror. And for the first time in years, I saw strength. Not hidden, not suppressed, but visible. Leonard's final gift. I walked to the bookshelf, moved aside a row of books, and took out a wooden box. Inside were the documents Leonard had left behind. His will, his plans, his protection. I unfolded the papers carefully, and there it was. The clause I had once thought unnecessary. The condition. Julian would inherit everything, but only under one condition: that he showed consistent care, respect, and responsibility toward me during my lifetime. I sat there in silence, reading it again and again. Leonard had known. Somehow, he had known. The realization. This wasn't just about money. It never was. It was about dignity, about being seen, about being valued. The knock at the door. The doorbell rang. I didn't need to check. I already knew. Julian. Right on time. A new dynamic. When I opened the door, he stood there soaked from the rain. No longer composed. No longer in control. "Mom, what have you done?" he demanded, stepping inside. His voice carried panic now, not authority. Calm versus chaos. "Sit down," I said calmly. He didn't argue. That alone told me everything had already shifted. The conversation that changed everything. We talked. Not like before. Not as mother and son locked in old roles, but as two people, facing the truth. I showed him things. Counts he didn't know existed. Investments I had managed alone. Growth he hadn't expected. His expression changed. Shock. Confusion. Then something new. Respect. The new rules. "Things will be different now," I said. "You'll have access, but not control." He didn't like it. Of course he didn't. But for the first time, he didn't fight it. A shift in power. Because for the first time in his life, he understood something. His mother wasn't weak, wasn't dependent, wasn't someone he could overlook. The beginning of change. As he stood to leave, something in him had softened. Not fully. Not yet. But enough. "Happy birthday, Mom," he said quietly. Late, but real. A new chapter begins. After he left, I returned to the window. The rain had slowed. The city lights reflected across the river. And inside me, there was peace. Not because everything was fixed, but because I had finally taken back control. What this really was. This wasn't revenge. This wasn't punishment. This was awakening. Mine and his. And as I stood there that night, watching the river flow, I realized something simple, something powerful, something I should have known all along. No one gets to decide my worth but me. The morning after my 70th birthday felt different. Not lighter, not easier, but clearer. Like a storm had passed, not quietly, not gently, but thoroughly enough to wash everything clean. A new kind of morning. I woke early as always. Some habits never leave you. The sunlight filtered through the curtains, softer than usual, as if even the day itself understood that something had changed. I made my coffee strong black just the way I liked it, and stepped out onto the balcony. The Ashley River shimmered under the morning light. Calm, steady, unbothered by what had happened the night before. And for the first time in years, so was I. Not regret, clarity. I stood there for a long time thinking, not about what I had lost, but about what I had finally reclaimed. My voice, my boundaries, my worth. The truth was, I didn't regret what I had done. Not the confrontation, not the decisions, not even the pain it caused. Because sometimes, pain is the only language people understand. The call that changed the plan. Around 7:30 my phone rang. Margaret, my closest friend for over 40 years. Allison. I'm so sorry, she said the moment I answered. Yesterday was chaos. My granddaughter had an accident. I didn't even get to call you. I smiled softly. It's all right, Margaret. She's okay, isn't she? Yes, just a broken arm. But tell me, how was your birthday? Did Julian finally do something right for once? I paused, not because I didn't trust her, but because I knew what I was about to say would change everything. It was unforgettable, I replied. The decision to move forward. After the call, I didn't sit around. I didn't dwell. I didn't second guess. Instead, I got ready, because I had things to do. Important things. Returning to where it all began. The central bank building stood tall, just as it always had. Glass and steel. Modern. Imposing. But familiar. I had spent decades of my life there. Today, I walked in not as an employee, but as someone who finally understood her own value. An old ally. Mrs. Miller? The receptionist looked surprised. I'd like to see Mr. Reynolds, I said calmly. Within minutes he was there. August Reynolds. Once a young intern I had trained. Now the chief financial officer. Allison, he said warmly, embracing me. You should have called. This is a surprise. I think you'll find. I've had quite a few surprises myself lately, I replied. The strategy becomes real. I told him everything. Not emotionally, not dramatically, but clearly, precisely, like a woman who knew exactly what she was doing. He listened, carefully, respectfully, and when I finished he leaned back and said something I will never forget. You're not reacting, he said. You're restructuring your life. I smiled. That's exactly what I'm doing. Building the future on my terms. For the next 2 hours we worked. Not on revenge, but on structure, protection, clarity. We reorganized everything. Assets, accounts, access, control. Nothing illegal, nothing hidden, just intentional. The legal foundation. From there I went to see Robert Hayes, our family lawyer, an old friend of Leonard's. When I explained the situation, he didn't hesitate. What you're doing is not only legal, he said. It's wise. We updated everything. Wills, trusts, ownership structures, and most importantly, conditions. The new reality. By the time I left his office, everything had changed. Not just on paper, but in principle. Here's what I decided. 60% of everything would go into a protected educational trust for Amanda. 30% would remain under my control for my life, my needs, my choices. 10% would go to Julian, immediately. Not as punishment, but as perspective. The visit that sealed it. That afternoon I went to Julian's office. No appointment. No warning. Just truth. When he walked in he looked exhausted. Like a man who had spent the entire night realizing something he didn't want to accept. The final conversation. I placed the documents in front of him. These are the new terms, I said. He flipped through them. Slowly. His face changed with every page. 10%, he said finally. Yes. That's all you're leaving me? I looked at him steadily. No, I said. That's what I'm giving you right now. The lesson. This isn't about money, Julian, I continued. It's about understanding what truly matters. He ran a hand through his hair. Frustrated. Conflicted. Over one dinner? He asked. I shook my head. No, I said softly. Over years. The truth he couldn't ignore. You didn't just lie to me, I said. You dismissed me. You treated me like I didn't matter. And that is something I will never accept again. The condition. I pointed to the final page. You want everything restored? He nodded slowly. Then prove it. How? By showing respect, consistency, presence. Not for a day, not for a week, for a year. The moment of realization. For the first time, he didn't argue. He didn't interrupt. He didn't defend himself. He just sat there, thinking. The truth about power. Why are you doing this? He asked quietly. I stepped closer. Because I love you, I said. But love without respect isn't love. The unexpected move. Before I left, I added one more thing. I spoke with Mr. Reynolds this morning. Julian froze. You did what? He knows, I said calmly. Not everything. Just enough. His face went pale. Why would you do that? Because integrity matters, I replied. Even at work. A door still open. I walked toward the door, then paused. He invited us to dinner this Saturday, I said. Julian blinked. What? He wants to meet you. Then I smiled slightly. Consider it your first test. What came next? That evening Amanda came to see me. She hugged me tightly. I'm proud of you, she said. Those words meant more than anything else. The final truth. That night, as I stood once again on my balcony, looking out at the river, I realized something simple. I hadn't lost my family. Not completely. But I had lost something else. The version of myself that stayed silent. That accepted less. That tolerated disrespect. The ending that wasn't an end. I don't know what will happen next. Maybe Julian will change. Maybe he won't. Maybe Patricia will understand. Maybe she won't. Maybe things will heal. Or maybe they won't. But this I know. At 70 years old, I finally chose myself. My voice. My dignity. My life. And that changes everything. Because no matter what happens next, I will never again allow anyone, not even my own son, to make me feel invisible.